Personal Finance with Warren Ingram.
He's with us this evening. Warren, 75 basis point interest rate hike. How much is this going to hurt?
It's going to hurt a lot, because it's also, it's on top of previous rate hikes in a time when our economy is depressed and we're not growing and load shedding, et cetera, et cetera. This is not good news for consumers, especially those with a fair whack of debt, which describes most salary earners in South Africa. So it's really going to hurt, Bruce, but it's vile tasting medicine, which our economy needs.
Yeah, I did some calculations earlier, and it's on R1 million mortgage. And let's face it, if you're buying a house in the burbs, you're not going to get much for R1 million. But if you have got R1 million mortgage and you've had it since before these interest rate hikes started, you're paying from today 1,250 Rand a month more for every R1 million in debt that you have. So 2 million rands worth of debt, that's 2,500 Rand. 3 million rands worth of debt, that's 3,750 Rand. You get the picture. It adds up rather quickly. And then on top of that, just the fuel price increases. If you've got a 55-litre tank and drive around a bit and fill up once a week, that's another 1,250 Rand a month extra that you're paying on petrol too. It's just, the cost of living crisis in South Africa is very much entrenched.
It is. And I think, people with car debt, for example, who are already paying astronomical rates will be, equally severely affected, especially when you add the fuel cost to that as well. I think the one comment is, I think people are going to be really angry with the Reserve Bank, and it's important to note this is not caused by the Reserve Bank. This is kind of a virus that we've got from the rest of the world. This is not bad behavior. For once, it's not bad behavior caused by South Africans. This is unfortunately stuff we've got to deal with because other people are behaving terribly and it's landing on our laps. But if we don't do this, and we let inflation get out of control, the cost of living crisis will get worse, and it gets worse exponentially, which is really frightening. So I'm not critical of the Reserve Bank. I think it's better that we take the bad dose or heavy dose of really vile tasting medicine now, rather than, really terrible outcomes later. And I think that's the problem. It's much worse later if we don't deal with it now.
And here's the problem, though, Warren. We're now going to look here and we're going to get millions of forecasts of people saying, oh, no, we're near the top of the interest rate cycle. No, we're not. We're near the bottom of the interest rate cycle. We're still going to get lots of interest rate hikes. We're still going to see hyperinflation. No, take your money offshore, keep your money local. We're going to see all of this sort of very, very noisy activity, particularly in social media. But, big investment houses, too, will spin their particular views of the world. And I wonder whether or not it's possible for us to start looking ahead into the future and making some predictions and some forecasts and somehow magically weaving solutions to our savings problems, because my goodness gracious me, we've got enough of them.
Yeah, I think the only prediction you'll ever hear me make is that that any prediction I make would be wrong. And I think that, the problem with economic forecasts are, we've seen these polls of economists for years about what interest rates are going to do, what's the rand going to do. And right around the world, economists are wrong more than half the time. And that's not a reflection on the economists. Before I get abusive tweets from economists, that's because the world is just so incredibly uncertain, and change can happen overnight. Whether it be an invasion of a country, a pandemic, a terrorist attack, anything. It could be a natural crisis that can change the dynamics so quickly. So I think it's important to know we can't look at the situation and say, well, 6 out of 10 economists are saying this is the peak of the interest rate cycle, so we can start to do something different, or we can start to invest according to what those forecasts tell us. What we need to know is this is the interest rate environment we're in. This is where we are today, and let's deal with the situation and the knowns. And this is a known. These are facts that we know today. These are our interest rates. Prime is at 9%. It's horrible. Cost of living is high. We need to make decisions according to these circumstances and hope that things get better in the future. But don't start investing according to the hope, because that's a terrible way to invest.
Okay, so Dare I suggest that we turn the uncertainty into an opportunity, because surely that is what smart investors would want to do. Everyone's stuck in the same global environment. The same problems affect all of us. And it's how we respond to those problems that determine whether or not we have a positive outcome a year or 5 from now.
Exactly right, and I think you're hitting the nail on the head now. So the one the biggest resistance I've had with conversations around investments this year has been saying to people who have money, I think you should be investing now, and I think you should do it in batches. Whether you do it monthly or quarterly doesn't matter. But I think if you've got capital and it's sitting on the sidelines in a money market account or in a bank account, you should be deploying that money into the investment markets now. And the resistance has been rather severe, and I think some people would like to have checked me into a mental institution.
You would be so proud, by the way, of Julia. Julia was here last week. You had the Thursday evening off, and no doubt you were looking at the bottom of a wine bottle or something equally wonderful. You would have been so proud because she had realized some of the money that she'd invested on the all share index and into the top 40, into Satrix, and she'd paid. She thought, well, she had no income last year. So she paid the capital gains tax and got a bit of relief on capital gains tax, and then took a chunk of money offshore, and she's starting to apply that money in tranches into global indices. And I think your message, which you gave her 12 years ago, is certainly stuck.
And it's amazing that, she has that, fortitude to do that. Whatever she sets her mind to, she does. And that's the lesson for all of us is, we don't need to be investment experts. She certainly doesn't claim to be, but she sets up a plan, takes a little bit of advice and then does, the 99% hard work, which is sticking to the plan. And I think, we might look back at the middle of June as the time when markets started to bounce off their horrible lows. And just looking at some of the investments which have been severely punished around the world, it looks like a lot of them have done a little bit better despite all the bad news. And in some ways, the bad news is accumulating now. It's not dissipating. And that's my message is we don't know. We will not know until history has kind of been written when the bottom of the markets were, whether it's this year or next year. But if it's happened already, and we've hit the bottom of the markets, and I'm not making that prediction, but if we are around there, take comfort from the fact that if you're deploying money into these markets now, you're buying them at a much cheaper price than they were in, October, November last year. And certainly, I think that paying for shares, especially the stock markets here and around the world now at these kinds of prices, what you're doing is you're capturing very good returns over the next 5 years. What I don't know is if all those returns come next week or if they come in 4.5 years' time. But history is on your side to buy those shares now and yes, do it in phases. I'm not saying commit it all in one shot, but stick to your investment then, because it will be hugely rewarding. History tells us time and time again, when markets are like they are now, you buy now, you will be well rewarded by not gambling, but just buying sensible, well spread, well diversified investments.
And diversification is it. So it's diversification. It's diversification across sectors, across companies, across countries, across territories, across stock markets. And it's in bite-sized chunks, I think, is the message there.
Absolutely. And it's also, that's a form of diversification over time. And the one thing is when we look at what are the best performing investments, it's usually going to be shares. Often I get the question, people would say, well, why don't we just buy shares? If that's a no brainer, let's do that. And my comment is, if the world was certain and investments were certain, what we would do is simply buy the best performing investment and not worry about anything else. Just buy that and get the return and enjoy the certain ride. The fact that the world is so uncertain means that we should be buying a range of investments, a range of countries. We should be buying, things that generate interest. So bonds, and we maybe want a bit of property. We definitely want some cash, and we want a lot of shares. And the reason we want to do that is because we cannot predict. No one can predict what's going to happen. And so having that spread, far and wide and certainly over time is what protects you against the uncertainty. I almost think It's the only antidote we have to this poison of uncertainty. And if you properly spread across asset classes and geographies, you'll be okay. Psychologically, you might get a lot more gray hairs, but investment will be well if you close your eyes and stick to the plan.
Excellent. Thank you, Warren. Nice and soothing, as we expect you to be. Now, from Jenna Gardner. Jenna Gardner sent us a message and saying insurance sounds scary and boring. I don't know how something can be scary and boring, but hey, for Jenna, it is scary.
I was wondering the same thing.
Okay. Jenna says it's scary and boring. And I think, actually, no, I do relate. I relate to that because yes, it is scary and it's blah, blah, and it's boring. Are there any good rules I can use for what insurance one should have? Are there any insurance types that you think most people should have, but often get overlooked or forgotten about? What a lovely question, Jenna. More on that question with you, Warren Ingram, our personal finance expert, on a Thursday night in a moment.
The Money Show.
Personal Finance with Warren Ingram.
So, Warren, Jenna finds insurance both boring and terrifying at the same time, which is, I think, an interesting combination. And it, I think, is causing her to put her head in the sand when it comes to getting appropriate insurance to cover her risk. And she's asking you for some broad brushstrokes on the sorts of insurances she should be considering. And yeah, let's look at it at its most basic level. You've got a house, you've got a car, you have a child, and your child is 3. Yeah, I think that's enough problems. What sort of insurance would a Jenna need under those sorts of circumstances?
I think you can kind of divvy insurance up into 3 broad categories. So you need insurance for your stuff, and that goes to your house and car, for example. You need insurance against you not being able to earn an income one day, and they'll typically call that income protection or disability insurance. And then the third group of insurance is the one that has to cover you when you die. And the reason that you need that insurance is if you do have a 3-year-old, financially, you need to provide for your child and also to cover any debts that you've got. So I think, for someone like Jenna who finds this boring and scary, those are the 3 kind of broad brushstrokes that I would be looking at. Is I would want to know that, that my stuff, whether I'm not saying every single thing in your house needs to be insured, but certainly, your car, when you drive on the roads, that's key for you. Your house and the key stuff in your house, because it's expensive to kind of re-kit your house if you have a fire or something like that, is certainly important to do. Your ability to earn an income, so making sure that you've got disability protection or income protection, and tied to that is health insurance, making sure you've got a medical aid, because that helps you stay healthy to get an income. And then make sure you've got enough insurance on your life to cover any debts, and then to look after anyone that's financially dependent on you. In our country, that's it could be parents, siblings, children, kind of 360 degrees around us. Make sure you've set aside enough money for all the people that are financially dependent on you, if you still want them to be looked after on your death. So very kind of broad strokes, that those would be the 3, Bruce.
The trouble is, you've got to then decide the level at which you insure. Because having been through this process and then looking at the cumulative cost of insurances across all of these things that you suggest, of course, the health insurance and the disability insurance and the inability to work insurance and the life cover, and the car insurance and the buildings insurance and the insurance, all of these things, add up very quickly. And particularly if you are wanting to protect some fairly large numbers, it can cost a vast amount of money each and every single month. And a lot of people get tempted to say, well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to self-insure. Rather than spend 5, 10, 15, 20,000 rand, whatever your level is, on insurance, I'm going to put the money into an investment or into a bank account. And provided nothing goes wrong in the first 6 months, I should be able to cover most eventualities if, trouble hits the fan.
Yeah, and it's I understand the logic of that, and that little proviso at the end of your sentence is right. If nothing goes wrong, of course, what happens is Murphy arrives and you cancel your insurance, and 1 month into your 6-month or 12-month or 24-month plan is when your car gets written off, and now you owe the bank money for your car. and you owe the person who you drove into to replace their car, and you have no car of your own, and you don't have now the ability to earn an income, so you get fired. I just think all around terrible idea. So self-insurance makes a lot of sense to me when you have, significant money to cover certain things. So for example, you don't need to insure your laptop, if you've got enough cash on hand to replace your laptop. I'll take that point. And certainly, a lot of the stuff in your house, if it's not, life and death to you and you need to do some trade-off decisions, then maybe you don't insure every couch and, every piece of painting on the wall and all that stuff, but you insure your house as a whole, to make sure that you've got somewhere to live and most of the basics. So I mean, I agree with you, Bruce. I've never met an insurance agent who's given me quotes on everything that actually said to me, gee, you've got enough. There's always a gap. There's always going to be a need and there's always going to be a trade-off. But then make sure that you've covered the most important basics. I think, if you've got money and you don't have a hospital plan, for example, I think that's just plain reckless. I wouldn't cancel that if I've got sufficient money. And I've already pointed out the car one. And then if you've got, if you're young and healthy and, you've got a whole life ahead of you, not ensuring your ability to earn an income. If you are in an accident and you are disabled, again, that's a heck of a trade-off to make. And I think, people always say, that's such a waste of money. Well, it's a waste of money until you have the accident and you aren't able to work. No, but the death insurance.
Yeah. Everybody resents paying insurance premiums. But ask anybody who's had a big claim and they're just so flippin' grateful that they did. You never want to claim on your insurance policies. It's a terrible desire to have, to think, oh, I must get a claim on this, because then something's gone horribly wrong in your life. You want to avoid claims, but have the backup.
And surely all of us know someone, it's not 3 or 4 or 5 degrees of separation. Surely all of us know someone very close to us that got affected by COVID, that, either lost their job or lost their lives. And to question the need for insurance after we've had this horrific, humanitarian disaster on us. Surely you don't need any more examples. Surely, we don't need to sit here and lecture at you. We just need to help you make the best decisions. But if you still need to be convinced that you need to insure this stuff, I don't know what to say.
Last point, 30 seconds. What is a price to earnings ratio, a PE ratio? It's referred to every single day on the radio. What is it and why does it matter?
So price earnings ratio is the number of years of profit that a company is generating at the moment, relative to its price per share that it's trading at the moment. So for example, if a company is trading at a price of 20 Rand and it earns 1 Rand's worth of profit this year per share, then it's trading at a PE ratio of 20. So what then is that, if you're buying the company today, you're hoping that it's going to generate 1 Rand of profit at least for the next 20 years to justify the price that you've paid for the share today. So typically, companies with a higher PE ratio, you're expecting them to grow and you're expecting them to grow their profits fast so that you get rewarded much more quickly than in 20 years time. And companies with a low PE ratio, you're getting hopefully a bargain because you don't need to wait too many years to get paid back for the price you paid. It gets complicated after that, but in simple terms, that's what a PE ratio is.
Thank you, Warren Ingram. He is an executive director, Galileo Capital. He's a personal financial advisor and he kindly gives of his time every Thursday evening to share with you his wisdom and insights into the world of money.